I'm joined in this episode by Amber from The Road to Tar Valon, a Wheel of Time podcast. Amber and Tracy at the time first allowed me onto their show many moons ago, and since then we have kept in touch and made occasional appearances on both channels. In this episode, we jump straight into talking about TV shows without any other introduction and other stories and storytelling. I put it to Amber that we are experiencing something of a golden age in storytelling and story representation. Amber is an immensely knowledgeable interlocutor when discussing TV shows because she has almost seen it all, knows who played what, and what they were wearing at the time. At one point, we even cover how people with political axes to grind shout into the void of social media, waiting to hook the romantic fan for a bout of hate and chips. Don't fall for it. These people do not take prisoners, and they will try to forever darken your love for your show. It's not worth the hassle. As always, thank you, Amber, for your thoughts, your colourful input, and the Guitarra Moroso style foretelling. Sorry, I had to fit in a New Spring reference there, just for Amber. Two and a mic clocking out. Enjoy.
Dung weche pek kod welo mabiro etu under mic. Dung parodit kod jok mawuoye etu under mic. Seche tim sud buta wawinji etu under mic. Wola wachokre wabed piny bi wawinje ero chako momit ndi and a mic podcast makende.
Just in case
Yeah.
I have to sneeze or something.
Yeah, that's all right, Sneeze. We take natural noises. Some natural noises may cause alarm. I hope the microphone won't pick up every natural noise, but there's actually a woman on Instagram who I follow, and she speaks in sign. I believe she's deaf. She communicates in sign, but she people who communicate in sign, they still make noises, mouth noises, and so on.
Yeah.
And I had never heard these noises before, and it's the same noises that people who speak make. Only when we speak, we cover these other noises up with our words, with our speech, as it were. And it was brilliant listening to this woman. And because she also has lots of bracelets and bangles and stuff, and there's such a rhythm to her communication. And when I edit out all of these crazy noises that I make and so on. And I imagine other people do a much better job of it than I do anyway. But it is interesting, isn't it? The amount of noise that we actually filter out naturally anyway in a conversation. I don't know.
Yeah, I always like watching those videos of people getting their cochlear implants turned on and hearing for the first time. And a lot of the times they will say, I didn't realize just how the noise of a room sounded. You can hear the electricity of a lamp being turned on or something like that. And it's oh, yeah, stuff you don't think of really.
No, and I think since doing audio editing on the podcast, I've become a lot more aware of the noise just within the room, let alone the noise that our brains have to deal with on a daily basis when we step out into the street. So there's an alarming amount of pollution that our ears and brains have to deal with. So
that, and too, editing yourself, I feel at first it's always so strange because it kind of goes back to the listening to yourself on a recording, back in the day, the answering machine, and it always takes a minute to get used to hearing yourself talk. But I notice as a woman, a lot of the times women, when we're speaking to other women, we use signifiers and picking up on hearing myself, for example, when me and Tracy were recording, and you'd have that few second kind of like where the conversation stops and you're thinking about what you're going to say, but the thought hasn't really hit your lips yet. And it's like, like, and I've had to kind of retrain myself to talk, but also when I get really excited about something, there's no covering it up. I try to edit it out sometimes because you hear it mostly from men in the comment section. You say like a lot. And it's like, well, that's how I talk. So sorry.
Yeah, but the interesting thing, I mean, it's so easy to point at somebody such as yourself who has, and I'm going to include most of this conversation in a podcast, yet
Sure.
to hell
Yeah.
with it. This is just
Yeah.
completely off the cuff. But people like yourself and me, but more so in this case, you obviously, because you get people who write comments to you a lot more than I do. I don't really get comments on the stuff that I post. And but they can constantly hear you. They can go back and listen. They can count. In most conversations that people have, I think 99.9% of conversations that people, nobody's recording. We never hear back. And if somebody says to me, "Oh, Zach, on the 5th of April at 10:42, we were having a chat, and you said like about 312 times," I mean, that's not really going to happen, is it? But you are there. You've recorded everything. You've published your conversations, and of course, people are going to point out things like this and that and so on. But do you really want to remove one word, which is extremely conversational, which almost everybody uses commonly all the time anyway? It's such a pain in the neck having to edit this out all the time anyway. And why bother?
I've tried to give myself a little bit more grace, where when I first started editing things, I took it very seriously, where you would call it like hyper edited, where you don't want any kind of, no background noises, nothing. And then, like sometimes Tracy, when I would record with her, she has like a gaggle of dogs. So you would have, all hell breaking loose in the background, all three dogs come running through, barking at the mailman. You start, you stop. Sometimes I don't think she would hear it because, if you have so many dogs, you hear it and it kind of in one ear and out the other. And it's like, do we reshoot that? Do we start over? But you kind of start to feel where your comfort level is in terms of like what you're comfortable with allowing other people to hear. And I've gotten away from the hyper editing where I'm feeling insecure every time I say the word like. But I think as a woman, it's just, especially an American woman, it's kind of just something that's in our vernacular, really.
I think that very much so. I hear this a lot more from American women than, say, British women. But having said that, I mean, it's just not just women. I think nowadays a lot of men say it too. My natural inclination is not towards words like, but rather I and are naturally a
Yes.
lot. Yeah.
Um,
And
um,
yeah, it's an endless exercise of, okay, that's an too many, Zach. So remove that. I also sometimes do this, which is a bit like a frog croaking, and it comes across like, I don't
well,
know.
you have a very naturally deep voice too. So, like, on one hand, that could be annoying when you're trying to edit, but two, I think you actually have like a very great radio podcasting voice where I don't know, like, it, yes, you're welcome. You're welcome. No, but some people too, I've had this problem where I'm listening to a podcast and it's maybe just, for example, like three men speaking. And sometimes it's really hard to differentiate who's talking because the voices all sound the same. And you kind of get like a little confusion going on. But I don't know, that's what's so nice when people have maybe more unique voices, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, as you've probably heard, I prefer doing podcasts anyway with women because I enjoy having different perspectives on topics, and I find that one of the best ways to do that is to get people from not only different genders but different backgrounds, different countries, and so on. But you're right. I mean, when you do listen to a group of men speak, once they pass a certain level, as it were, of depth with regards to their voice, then they do basically meld into one another. I think this is why I enjoy audio, especially the more modern productions of audiobooks, because the narrators have become phenomenally talented nowadays at varying their voices, even the accents, um, and the way that they present the stories. And we're going to get into storytelling in a big way, because that's what we basically have based a lot of our conversations on in the past. Anyway, the
Yeah.
way that they deliver these stories is phenomenal, and I think we are living a bit of a golden age with regards to the production of storytelling media, which is probably a good way of us to get into the topics that we want to get into. But I mean,
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, I would agree with you there too. I like books in different format for many different reasons. I have a dog. I walk my dog at least twice a day. And as I'm walking him, I want something like in my head, something to entertain me as I'm just walking. So, audiobooks, podcasts, that's always my go-to. But for just like lounging about, now it's even gotten to the point where I have to really kind of decide, do I want the physical copy of a book, or do I want the convenience of something for my Kindle so I can lay in bed with the lights off and not, just kind of like slowly read myself into slumber, which I can't do with a physical copy because I'd have to turn the light on. So it's interesting how we can find all different ways to enjoy our storytelling.
well, I mean, I fall asleep also with so my wife found this a headband style headphone which
I've
has
seen those.
flat. They are so cool. I mean, okay, I I sometimes wake up strangling myself, but I mean, um depending on how I've moved, but generally speaking, I mean, they are really comfortable, and I don't get any further into the story than a bit anyway, because I just fall asleep to this wonderful rhythmic storytelling voice sort of in the background, and I find it very comforting. So it's quite similar, but
I love audiobooks for that reason too. I mean, there have been times where I've really just put something on and it's just kind of lulled me into sleep. But it is a lot of it has to do with those narrations where you have some of these just phenomenal narrators. I mean, you've listened to the Wheel of Time audiobooks, right? Okay.
yeah.
Michael Kramer and Kate Redding. And I mean, just a married couple taking on one of these massive series. What a delight. I mean, that would be like a dream, I think, for me, just narrating audiobooks. I couldn't do it though. I say like too much.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I mean, but there are some talent. I mean, and I've also bought the audiobook for The Eye of the World, which Rosamund Pike has narrated, and I'm saving it for some reason. Have you listened to it?
I've only heard the little like synopsis where it gives you like the paragraph at the beginning, but there's also a friend of mine named Jordan Runnels who is doing an accompaniment to the audiobook. So like, do you know how they have these kind of like fully mastered scores with audiobooks now where it'll be like background music, and if they're walking down the path, you can hear the horse's hooves kind of clopping away. He made one for Lord of the Rings, and now he's working on one for Eye of the World.
Oh, wow.
And it's really interesting like how many like levels up things are getting now, where it's like, okay, like first you just had like kind of the cheesy narrators where it was what it was and no big deal, but the accessibility factor for that is great. Say if you're blind or something, I mean, an audiobook is just truly like a gift. But now it's like, okay, they've got music, they've got horses, they've got it all. You can hear the wind, like so many different layers to it. So when you said we're kind of in a golden age, I would absolutely agree. But I really want to listen to Rosamond at
Mm.
some point. I just don't want to have to rebuy all of all of the audiobooks.
Yeah, but I mean, do you think she'll go through all of them, or was it just like a one-off special to do Eye of the World?
I think it hinges on how long Amazon decides to keep doing the show. I mean, if they finish it, I could see her doing them all, but if they cancel it, I don't know. Maybe she would want to move on to something else. I
Mm.
don't know what her contract, what's in her contract. It'd be curious to see though, wouldn't it?
Very much so. But yeah, when you raise that, and this has always been a fear of the fans of the show, the fans of the story, that things may go the way of other shows, unfortunately, where they were extremely popular, and yet the producer decided, you know what, we're not going to continue with this. How long do you think Wheel of Time has got before the accountants come in and screw everything up?
Before the accountants, so like when they pull
Yeah,
the plug.
yeah. If they pull it, I mean.
Yeah, yeah. It all just it depends really on how these streaming services now gauge what success is. And a lot of it is completion rate, meaning someone has sat since minute one and finished the entire season and didn't quit and like not come back to it. That's one metric. I know another metric is how many people signed up for the streaming platform based on, excitement for said show. And another metric is online engagement, how many people are talking about it online. But we've seen really incredible shows get the plug pulled on them, and maybe they didn't have as high watch numbers as some of the others, but they were truly incredible shows. So it's really hard to say, but I know that the Wheel of Time has done pretty well. I know a lot of outlets have said, why the hell did you give Rings of Power all that money? That was garbage. It should have gone to Wheel of Time. And then, no,
Which is
no,
harsh. Which is harsh. But yeah.
no, yeah, no hate to anyone who enjoyed that. Um, but there's also people saying things like the showrunner himself has said he wants to finish it in 8 seasons. So, I mean, I don't know, 8 seasons, and then you get almost 2 years between the seasons coming out. So, how long can you keep that up for? And there's other questions too, like what if your actors age out? What if they're playing a teenager, but by the time you finish, they're going to be like mid 30s. So, there's all kinds of questions, but honestly, I don't really worry about it too much. Like it seems there's a never ending steady stream of entertainment. It would be great to see the shows, or I guess the stories that you love, come to like its full fruition beginning to end, but I try not to stress out about things like that.
Sure. Yeah, I think you're one of the few, because so many people I've seen going, yeah, they really lose their shit online at the slightest sort of hint that something may be awry, and oh no, I can't believe it, I can't believe it. And there's like people really hit the panic button quite quickly. But yeah, you're completely right with regards to the amount of entertainment that there is out there. Not only is there an amount of entertainment out there, for every piece of entertainment out there, there seems to be a Road to Tar Valon review or
That's
preview
not
show.
true. That's not true.
You cover so much. It's amazing. I think you'd need to be an Aes Sedai traveling between shows to be able to do so. So you've definitely kept that element of the Road to Tar Valon active. But I mean, just to putting down a couple of names for things that you've spoken a lot about the Expanse. You've been speaking about the Expanse for years
I've
because
never
you absolutely
actually
loved it.
covered The Expanse.
No, you haven't. But when I remember when you always spoke with Tracy about different conversations would come up, you always referred back to The Expanse. Maybe not quite as much as you referred back to A New Spring, but you always referred back to The Expanse quite a bit. But on top of that, recently, obviously, you've done Three Body Problem. We've talked about that. You've done Shogun and Fallout, just to mention three. I mean, can you remember
Yeah.
any others that you've done previews on or reviews on?
I think like most recently was Dune, but that's about all that I can think of besides Wheel of Time stuff.
Mm. Yeah, Wheel of Time definitely is your main focus,
Yeah,
and you always come back to it, don't you? Wheel of Time. It's not like
yeah.
something. Yeah, yeah. You also did this great comparison with the baddies' clothes, and the style, and I thought, okay, that's a very Amber show because if I recall, in the past, you've always taken an interest in costume design. So.
I do really love that. Like I cannot lie. I mean, it's not initially like the main thing that would draw me into a television show or a film, but the way that costuming is used to kind of further a story or signify something about the character in kind of like this meta way is always very interesting to me.
Yeah, and it's an indicator also of how far shows have really developed because this is something which maybe in the 60s and 70s they never really cared about. I mean, if you look at the original Klingons in the original Star Trek, I mean, they were just normal dudes.
Well,
But then
yeah, that's I mean, that's the Star Trek thing though. It's like every alien in Star Trek is just like a human with like odd makeup on. It's like yeah. We've seen so many different things. Like I think about you brought up Star Trek, but look at Star Trek versus something like Foundation, where like you have these almost like intergalactic, like ancient Roman armor-esque, like sci-fi dresses, where it's like, what? Who came up with this? Who I want to be a fly on the wall if whoever was sketching out the design and was like, oh, add this. Oh, the angle right here. But it's really fun.
Yeah, I mean, I love the costumes. I've only watched the first 5 episodes of Foundation because I'm waiting to finish other things, and every time something else finishes, then there's something else that comes up. And
Yeah.
but yeah, I love the story of Foundation. I need to get onto it's Apple TV Plus, isn't it? Which is another. We're jumping around today. I do apologize for anybody trying to listen with any sense of logic to our conversation or topics, but it's not just the amount of entertainment. So I'll draw back on what I was going to say. It's not just the amount of entertaining shows and just the general entertainment that there is on offer. The plethora of platforms, unfortunately, kind of limits people's access to all of these different things. So I haven't continued watching certain shows because I simply don't want to pay another $10 or whatever, let's say something generic, every month for this stuff. And I'm not one of those smart users that cancels one platform to watch another one. So I should perhaps do that. But anyway,
Agreed. It's
yeah.
a nightmare. It's a nightmare. Like we had the whole generation of cable cutters because people were tired of that shit. They didn't want to pay for 40 different services and channels and et cetera. And now we've gone back to the same thing in terms of streaming platforms. It's really a nightmare.
Obviously, some organizations have existed for, I don't know, between 50 and 100 years, and they've got a ridiculous number of sort of legacy entertainment that they can put up. But I mean, to keep producing the stuff that they produce, surely it's not profitable for them to have their own platforms.
I think it depends on how many people they can get to sign up based on like a show because you mentioned the people who they'll buy it and then once the shows that are done with that they're watching is over they'll jump to the next one, so it's like, okay, we're canceling Netflix this month and going to Apple Plus, Apple TV, whatever, I forget the names, there's too many. But yeah, so I don't know with Amazon, I mean Prime Video, that's pretty much like a perk of having Amazon Prime, so it's like how much money can they make when it's also funding, the free shipping? But also something that's kind of interesting, so talking about the Wheel of Time, when the show came out and every new season, Robert Jordan's book series goes back up on, the most read list because so many people are buying the books. And you have to assume, okay, perhaps there's a financial stake for Amazon in terms of people buying the merchandise based on the show. And you're seeing that now with Fallout. Like they have a whole Fallout shop on Amazon. So, like, I'm sure there are other ways to make money from it. And I kind of feel like out of all of them, Amazon might have their hands in everything, if you will.
Yeah, which is a real shame that they keep chucking in these adverts right
Oh
slap
my
bang in the middle.
God.
I mean, come on, you paid not to have these adverts, and now they've gone back to having these adverts. I'm not convinced by that.
Do you want me to cuss on this episode? Because I feel
Go
it.
for it.
I feel it coming. It's really unhinged. And I mean, I guess everything good has to come to an end at some point. I mean, Netflix, they really stuck it to people saying like no password sharing, guys, and it's like, oh no. What are these whole families gonna do when little Johnny goes to college and he can't pay for his Netflix? How's he supposed to get through the midterms? But
No chance. No chance.
no chance.
Yeah, but this is another way where how with the case of or in the case of Amazon Prime, they're kind of protected because nobody's going to give out their Amazon Prime password because all of a sudden, Uncle Johnny, because now that he's graduated and moved on, but he unfortunately couldn't get a job with the education that he managed to find because he was watching Netflix all the time.
Now he can work in the warehouse.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. The Amazon warehouse, but he can't afford the subscription, so he uses mine, and he keeps on ordering shit that I don't want him to order. So, I mean, this is the thing, though, isn't it? So nobody's going to give out the Amazon Prime password because you
Right.
could, so they're kind of protected on that one.
No, that's a good point. But I mean, we'll see. It seems like every year there's a new streaming platform and there's a new like hit show on a like up and coming streaming platform where people are like, well, if you want to watch this really good show, you're going to feel pretty pressured to buy the platform, unless you throw caution to the wind and you're sailing the seven seas pirating things, which is very illegal here in Germany. And I should tell all German listeners, do not do that because you will get fined thousands of dollars.
Yeah, I've never tried, so I can't. I can't attest to the quality or lack thereof of this particular service. I remember in the old days when sort of football about 30 years ago, when all of these things came about and people could start watching this or that on some illegal stream. The quality was so bad back then.
Oh, the streams are okay. It's just like seeding and leeching.
Okay.
So like you can still go to Footy Bite and watch your, Saturday match and
Really?
you should be okay.
Okay. Yeah, for me, I just remember it was so bad, and then I thought, you know what, I will pay for it, and if I can't pay for it, I'm not going to watch it because the entertainment quality is just pure pants. And and the thing is with these other shows, it's the same. I mean, the thing is, there's so much there for us to watch. We put Disney Plus on. Is it Disney Plus? Yes, it doesn't matter. Disney. We put Disney on last Friday with my son, and we watched the show. I think it was called Akaji, and there were 6 or 8 episodes, and we watched them all in one go. We watched the entire series of this show, and it was brilliant about some young girl in Lagos in Nigeria, and futuristic sci-fi story. Fantastic story. We watched it all in one go. And you will come across some of these little wonderful things on these platforms which aren't really hugely advertised. But what I've noticed about some of the shows that you stick to is I think you've got 3 streaming platforms. So you've got Prime, you've got Netflix, and you've got Disney Plus, right? Have you got something else, or are they the main 3 that you watch?
Honestly, it's never about platform for me. I mean, obviously, if I don't have the streaming platform and I don't see the show, I'm not going to talk about it and I'm not going to review it. But out of the ones that I do have, if there's something that, catches my attention, and I find myself thinking about it enough that I know that I have words to actually say about it other than just surface level, like, oh, that was good, then I'll consider it, like, covering it for the channel. Yeah.
Yeah, but you mentioned Foundation, but have you covered any Apple TV Plus shows? Because I haven't heard you do a review on Foundation. And also, there's a show called For All Mankind, which is getting all sorts of plaudits from people. And I don't think you've done a show about that either. Have you watched it?
I have. I really enjoyed the first 2 seasons. The what is it, on 4 now, and they're coming out with 5?
Mm,
The last 2 it was kind of hit or miss for me, but I didn't get I actually borrow a friend of mine's password to get the Apple shows. So I didn't get it until pretty recently. And had I had Apple Plus at the time, Apple Plus, Apple TV at the time when it came out, I
mm.
might have covered it. But it took me maybe 2 or 3 episodes to get kind of invested in this show. But it's much more of a drama. Like, it's interesting, it's a little bit soapy, Like, it's a fun show. I do enjoy the alternate history aspect of it. The last couple seasons were kind of all over the place, but still very enjoyable.
Okay, I haven't seen it yet, so I need to, yeah, because I haven't registered for Apple TV Plus, but that will come. One thing which I noticed Apple TV Plus announced, or there was an article about them, that they've announced that they've bought the rights for the Murder Bot series.
I'm so
Now,
excited about that.
yeah, you've also read the books. You're a big fan.
I've only read the first one. The series, I mean, they're small novellas. And I don't know why this kind of, like, chapped my ass, but the price point for those novellas are very expensive for these smaller books. But I don't know. I think I read the first one, went to get the second one, and I looked at my list of things that all the different books that I was wanting to read, and looked at the prices and I was like, "Oh, okay." And then I was like, "I want, like, a big, meaty, thick boy book," and just
Mm.
kind of never went back. But I really, really enjoyed that first novella. I don't know, short story, I guess. It's great. I love the murder bot. I love being in their mind. I think the inner speak to himself is so enjoyable and so funny. That poor guy just wants to watch his stories, his soap operas, and
It's like
doesn't
us.
really.
It's
Yeah.
basically the life that we want, but in a robot. Yeah, yeah. Martha Wells' creation is fantastic. I've listened, I think, to all of the audiobooks, so I went about
I've
it slightly different way. Yeah,
Did you like the audiobooks? I've heard they're
amazing,
very good.
amazing. The narrator's phenomenal. Really adds to the depth of the characters, which is a brilliant character anyway. But I just feel somehow manages to add to it, and it's a fantastic combination.
I listened to, like, the small, segment of it, and it sounds like a video game. Like, it's so crisp, and then you can hear, like, the background noises. It sounded very nice.
Yeah, there's a Brandon Sanderson partnership, or he co-wrote a series which were produced as an audio, but it's like a graphic audio book, I think they called it, with all of these sound effects that you said that your friend also does,
Mm-hmm.
and that they created the entire series with it. And I think the first chapter or so, it took me a bit of getting used to it, but then I went through the entire series within a couple of weeks because it was just so good. And this, yeah, again, we're coming back to this golden age of storytelling. But I mean, we've mentioned a couple of things that you've done there. The one that stands out, which doesn't quite fit the science fiction fantasy genre, is Shogun. Now, why is that?
Well, I mean, I don't typically limit what I read in watch to certain genres. I read way more science fiction than anything else. But in terms of like film and TV, ooh boy, do I love a good like historical drama. I mean, Shogun is incredible, probably one of the best television series that I think that we will see in the past maybe couple years. But I don't know, like I've always there's something very interesting about I've loved, Downton Abbey and stuff like that, the Gilded Age. I do enjoy a lot of different genres that just aren't, I'm not limited to fantasy or science fiction totally. But going back to the costumes, period dramas, that's where that's at.
Okay, I had a feeling we'd come at some point to the costume
The visuals
element.
overall,
Yeah,
yeah.
which again have improved a lot over the last. As in, if they were to make Shogun, well, they did make Shogun in the 80s, but if they
Yeah.
were to have made Shogun in the noughties, I don't think we would have been blessed with this level of attention to detail, which they've put into the show.
You're probably right. I think for that show, the main draw, beside it being a period drama, is the intrigue. And I would have to say overall, like if I'm not talking about genre in general, that's usually the main thing that's going to draw me to, a book or a film or a television show. I think all people who watch a lot of television, who read a lot, you kind of start to fall into this setting of like pattern recognition where you read so much, you watch so much, you can kind of start to guess, like, oh, like I know this trope. I know how that's going to end for that guy. Like you can see something coming a mile away. And one of the fun things is when a show has enough foreshadowing where you think you know what's going to happen, they pull the rug out from underneath you, and you think to yourself, oh, I should have seen that coming. Brilliant. What an amazing twist. And I think for me, that's the hallmark of a really interesting and engaging series because it's not so much about being taken out of real life. It's not so much about a distraction. It's about like using your brain while you're watching and actively taking part in something, trying to think like what's going to happen? How is this going to play out? Why did that character do this? I mean, some series are very surface level and just you turn on so you can have background noise while you're scrolling on your phone. There's nothing wrong with that, but a lot of the times, those aren't the shows that people are talking about.
No, definitely not. And I still can't believe Ned Stark didn't come back to life because that was just a ridiculous way to end season one. But yeah, anyway, that's probably been talked to death by a million other people who know it a lot more than me. But with regards to Shogun, this is something which, yeah, it's a great book by James Clavell. And I actually enjoyed. I think it was Richard Chamberlain, and I don't know how it's pronounced. Toshiro Mifune, a great Japanese actor, maybe the most famous of all time. How does, and I haven't watched it yet, by the way, but I don't feel that I need to because I know the story so well. But I mean, how does it compare, do you think, to if you've seen the 80s adaptation, that is?
I haven't seen the
You
80s
haven't seen it? Okay.
adaptation and I have not read the book. So this is one of the
Okay.
few times I know nothing, absolutely nothing going in. And it's been delightful. Like I'm so glad that I know nothing
Okay.
because it has truly led to some incredibly shocking moments, I must say.
Okay. Yeah, I have to watch. I will watch this. I mean, I've heard it's quite brutal as well. The 80s episode series, you can imagine there probably wasn't much blood in it from what I recall. But yeah, I really need to go into Shogun at a certain point once it's finished. Is it finished yet? I saw you
Next
upload
week.
next week. So the review, you did a review, was it of 7 and 8 this week?
The last one that I put out was episode 9, and then
Okay.
episode 10 will be next week. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool. So you've definitely covered that. And so you are, yeah, it's interesting going into it because we obviously Wheel of Time book lovers, we've read it to death. And so therefore anything that comes up, it's pretty easy to know where that's going. But from your perspective then, are you saying that you enjoyed Shogun more having not read the book?
Well, since I haven't
can't
read the
really-
book, I can't really compare. But for most shows that I cover, they're typically adaptations, whether it be, from a book or video game or whatever. But it's been really, really refreshing not knowing what's going to happen and getting to make predictions and stuff like that. And it keeps me much more engaged, I think. Where, like most adaptations, there's typically changes anyways, but for the most part, they're going to kind of follow the main plot beats where okay, well, this person eventually does this, and that has to happen at some point. So, yeah, I mean, like even with Game of Thrones, you read the series and the whole world is freaking out because they just got to witness the Red Wedding for the first time. But if you've read the book, you're just kind of sitting there like maniacally, like wringing your hands together, like, haha, I know what's coming. It takes the shock away from things, but it's just nice to kind of not do that in this series.
I'm still waiting for the episode of Dumai's Wells, and then maybe after that I can compare how these people will have thought with regards to the Red Wedding. I hope we get that far with Wheel of Time.
The showrunner has said that that's like that moment is what he wants to get to no matter what. So in terms of what he's being the most excited to show and present in terms of like one single, plot point, it's that. So, I mean, I feel like there's a good chance as long as as long as we get another season or two. I think if we do get Dumai's Wells, it'll come in season 4, to be honest.
Yeah, because he still has to create the Black Tower. I mean, they've started this already in season 2 by creating, by connecting him. I forget the name now, but
Logain.
Yes, yeah, with Logain. And so obviously that will happen. But I agree with you. Dumai's Wells will probably only occur in season 4 if we get there.
Yeah, because it happens in, what is it, the end of book 7? Is that right?
I can't remember.
That feels right. Feels right.
Yeah.
But that's basically the halfway point between the whole series. So if they're going to do 8 seasons, you're coming right up on the midway point. Feels like the logical place to stick it, and feels like you want to get to it sooner rather than later in case Amazon's thinking of pulling the plug.
Yeah.
I shouldn't put that out into the world, but knock on wood.
Yeah. But I for some reason I have this feeling that there's so much fan engagement that another platform would pick it up, even if that were to be the case. But you never know. Yeah, well, one of the questions that I wanted to get to, I know we've jumped around a bit, but we've spoken pretty much quite a bit about all the different shows out there and so on. And we've talked about futuristic sci-fi fantasy shows. We talked a little bit about Shogun, which is history, but you also mentioned
Downton Abbey.
That's it. I can never.
Yeah.
Why can't I ever remember Downton Abbey? It's such a basic name. Yeah.
Maybe that's why it's just too basic.
Yeah. I don't know what it is. But yeah, so we go from like we enjoy history. You can add Vikings to that and so on, and a couple of other fantastic shows. And then we've got the futuristic ones that we mentioned as well. This level of escapism, this level of, I guess, if we also focus a little bit on Fallout, and we've got post-apocalyptic stories as well that we can look into. Do you ever sense a connection between what's happening in the real world, the production of these TV shows. Is there a kind of message, a subliminal message perhaps, being expressed that we should pay attention to?
In any of the shows that we just mentioned?
In just generally that the
And
trend, if we look at a sort of trend in the last like few years, what kind of shows have come out, the kinds of things that you've covered and we've spoken about as well. I mean, it sounds a bit generic, but I mean, for
are we
me, there are
talking
some kind
more
of
like
trends,
in terms of like social issues, politics, okay, this type
all
of
of
thing?
that. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Um, I would say no, actually. I think from the beginning of time, and especially in terms of adaptations, you know, writers are opening, a blank page and they're putting their thoughts and they're making it an outlet for whatever. They're telling a story. There's always something, whether it be kind of surface level, woven through those words, or, something really hard hitting that they really want to draw attention to. And I don't think you can discount, social issues and political views and all the things like that because it's even the people who don't keep up on politics or social issues, they're affected by it. Like it's everywhere. It's, all around you. So I think, so many shows, of course, there's going to be some type of aspect in there. You see it a lot with science fiction. There's always the haves and the have-nots and, some catastrophe, some group, fighting for rights, some group being totally mistreated, very hallmark trope of the genre. And as far as fantasy goes, a lot of it is like the chosen one, someone who's kind of like a prophet. You look at Dune and it's like, is he a prophet or was the prophet a whole manipulation? And then you go into terms of like, well, look at this world, look at the classes, the social structure, who controls things. And I think it's very easy to kind of see that trickle down into all different types of media, even something as silly and goofy as Fallout. I mean, it's very, it's taking place in this kind of like Red Scare, time period of America, but it's not the real past, but it's like an alternate future, I guess. But it's in everything, but it's not something that really determines whether or not I will consume media. But of course, too, you have the people who are like so totally incensed by this, like the wokeification of everything, the angry keyboard warriors, where it's like they just have to insert political views into everything. And it's like, I don't know, like, I don't know how you can do it without it unless you want something so incredibly surface level. I mean, there's religion, politics, all kinds of things in every story, it seems, unless I'm really trying to think of one without any, and I can't. I mean, can you? Unless it's
No,
like a
no.
children's book, maybe, or like about a dog or something.
Yeah, but even a children's book about a dog would involve some kind of socio-political element to it.
Well,
Um,
yeah, there's usually like a parable in there, like don't do this because that will happen.
yeah, but I mean, I like that, and I think in many ways we're being tested. I really enjoy the fact that there are so many actors out there who take a political stance off the screen as well. You see them out there protesting and demonstrating, and I enjoy observing their participation in what would be considered normal human consideration, as in at that sort of common level. And I think that's something which should be emphasized in many cases. Yeah, Fallout is an interesting one as well. I do. You're right. It's a bit goofy, but there's a lot of serious storytelling in Fallout as well. And I've got the games, some of the games downloaded, and I've played a couple. I think the characters are brilliant, and the series looks fantastic. So I'm definitely gonna continue that.
I I mean, I thought it was going to be very surface level and kind of goofy, but I was actually pretty surprised at like how much I had to pay attention to catch all of the things. So that was kind of a surprise for me, which in turn made me want to talk about it.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe we can have a post fallout
Post
conversation as well.
fallout. We
Yeah,
still need to have a post three body problem
yes,
conversation too.
that's going to be had as well because I absolutely love that. Do we have any indication yet as to season two? Should I even ask that question?
Not announced, but they put so much into it. I would be very surprised if they didn't.
Hmm. Okay, all right. Yeah, we'll have to have a dedicated conversation for that. So yeah, we'll do that. One more thing something that occurred to me as you were speaking as well. And the wonderful Wheel of Time community on Twitter. I will always refer to it as Twitter. I'm sorry. Um, a lot of people identified political affiliations within the United States, and they connected these affiliations to opinions on the Wheel of Time adaptation. I don't know if you remember any of these conversations, but all of the people, all the haters were basically MAGA fanatics. This is what people kind of.
They put two and two together and like looked up people's like post history.
Yeah, something like this. Did you feel any of that, or is that not even something that you would consider a realistic observation?
I really don't know. I don't follow everyone on Twitter. I mute people sometimes if I feel like I need a break from, certain like bickering and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I think you see it with a lot of shows, people saying, "Oh, like I can't believe they cast this actor for this character. His skin color isn't the right shade that I imagined in my head. Anger noises, mouth breathing, screaming into the void." And it is it is it really that deep? I don't think so. We're seeing a trend of people who really want to voice their displeasure with adaptations not looking or being written exactly what their headcanon is. And I understand like some people needing an outlet for their frustrations, but I mean at some point like therapy is probably a better option than, screaming at people on the internet. And also, who dedicates so much time of their life to just being mad online? Like, oh, go touch some grass. Like, it's really not that deep. It's
Mm.
stories. Like, if it's consuming your life to this extent, to the point where, you're red in the face and just hoping and trying to cause the demise of something else that other people love, I don't know. I don't know what to say, honestly.
Yeah, I'm with you. I occasionally take deep dives into the different layers of society and as a politically, historically, and so on. And I have to say, I see a lot of sinister shit in that. And um, I find these kinds of stories as being a wonderful way of drawing me back out from those holes and back into society and smiley people and so on. And yeah, these are maybe, as you would say, like a band-aid, to cover up whatever crap is going on out there. But I feel these are necessary band-aids. We have to try to maintain our sense of perspective, and try to embrace, as it were, a better way. And I think some of these shows give us a pathway towards that. And I don't understand all of the hatred either, to be honest.
It's a weird landscape, I guess, but people are going to be mad about things, I guess, regardless. I feel, especially today, everything's so polarizing. You're either
Mm,
on one side or the other, and a lot of the times there's no room for looking at something like it has to be black or white. It can't be gray. And I mean, typically for me, I don't care, if there's politics or whatever in a show that I'm watching, specifically because a lot of the shows that I'm into are like make believe. They are total fiction. Even Shogun, it's based on history, but also like it is a very heavily romanticized version of, 1600s Japan. And, you're getting a very colorful version of things via your media. If I want, real history or whatever, I'll watch a documentary, or if I want politics, I'll watch the news. I don't necessarily need it in my escapism, but I'm not going to be upset if it's in there. That's crazy. Like,
Yeah, no, completely, completely. And when you touch on Japan, I'm going to do a podcast with a lady who lived in Japan for many, many years. She's a European herself, and I've asked her about Shogun. She said, "No, I'll never watch it because it's very westernized, as you say, romanticism." But I'm looking forward to having that chat and finding out exactly how a Westerner sees it.
well, yeah, I'm very interested to hear that, because my history knowledge of 1600s Japan, barely nothing, minuscule. But also, like, I've also read people saying, like, this whole idea of Bushido was like a 19th century invention, like by Japanese authors. So like this whole like very, like the way of the samurai, like it might not be as deep as a lot of Westerners think it is. So you've got, like the people with like the katana collection, like, Japan, love it, so romantic, so poetic. And it's like, I don't know. Is it? It could be. I don't know.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to have that chat. And you're right, actually. But what these TV shows should actually inspire within us is curiosity to go and find out for ourselves what really happened. And we shouldn't take them for being historical facts. And the shows themselves do not say that they are. And so we should always be mindful of that. Amber, what can I say? Thank you very much. I didn't even properly introduce you, but I will do an introduction later on. Yeah, we just jumped into it, and I feel very much like I'm talking with an old friend, even though I haven't even known you for that long. But that's just the feeling I get.
I mean, it's probably going on 3 or 4 years, maybe.
Yeah, but I've listened to you and Tracy speak so much. If I calculate word by word, that makes at least a 25-year association.
We're definitely old friends in that aspect.
Yeah.
You've heard me say like 5,000, 1 million, 200 bajillion, 40 times.
And I still have them all saved, and I can listen to them again to my heart's content. But I'm hoping to hear you say that live as well at some point this summer. So I will let you know if that can actually take place and when and so on. But thank you very much again for so graciously coming on to my show and talking to me in this haphazard, crazily structured fashion. And I do look forward to having that chat on Three Body Problem. But thank you very much again for your thoughts and your time.
Thanks for having me, and it is always a pleasure.
Two and a mic.